Just like that, another day, another episode. Man, it's been a while since I've done a solo episode. So lucky you, you got me all to yourself, Doctor. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, things has been great. I finished an exam today, and I did well, so I'm feeling very good and feeling better since I'm actually interested in today's topic. So let's get right into it. Let the world know who you are and what you do.
I am Dr. Betsy Chung. I'm a clinical psychologist. I practice in Southern California, and I primarily work with individuals and I help them improve their relationships with other people as well as with themselves. So when I say improving their relationship with themselves, a lot of times that means self-esteem and, how you view yourself. Do you like yourself? Your self-worth, how you view yourself in compared to the rest of the world and things like that. So yeah, I guess I'm a relationship therapist, but I don't work with couples. So a
Yeah.
lot of people always confuse that. There's like, oh yeah, so can you see me and my husband? I was like, no, actually, I can help you improve your relationship with your husband, but I won't see you and your husband.
That's actually really interesting because like generally, like I thought most relationship doctors work with couples. Like this is the first time I actually hear like, like a one-on-one and not a one-on-two. So this is great. I like wow. I don't know where to go off to other than this. I have been seeing roughly with people around my age, so around like mid 20s and a bit older. A lot of people are starting to think, because I have this certain disability, I'm not lovable or I can't get into a relationship. I'm doomed to being forever alone, basically. And it's sad to see because I'm always like, you have nothing to worry about, but they never take my word for it. So what do you have to say about like that kind of situation where people let their disabilities define themselves?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting because I think that the word disability is it's an interesting word because the truth of the matter is that there's no such thing as a perfectly functioning human. So, when we think about a disability, what we're really kind of talking about is this person has this one thing that prevents them from functioning in this particular society. And so what we end up doing sometimes is when we allow certain flaws that we have that get in the way of finding partners, what's really actually happening is it's our self-esteem that's the problem and not necessarily this actual disability. So
Hmm.
like for example, if you have, let's say, I don't know, let's say that you
Blind.
have autism, for instance. I'm sorry, what
I
you said?
I was gonna use blind as a because it's the most common disability. So, but yeah, let's go with autism because that's more interesting because those are the kind of people who already suffer from social interactions. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so basically, when we have a particular perception of how, let's say, autism can impact us and what it means about us in this world, then we're going to assume that, like, oh, people are going to judge me and people aren't going to like me. And so we're less likely to try new
Mm.
things and take risks because we're so afraid we're going to be rejected. And so, like, for example, if I were to have autism and I were to, assume like, oh, those people are going to judge me and they're going to think that I'm weird. So as a result of that, they're, not only are they going to try less, but they're going to be also more sensitive to signs that somebody's rejecting them. So
Mhm.
let's say that, they were to engage in a conversation with a new, guy or girl that they're interested in. They might be more sensitive to certain behaviors, like, oh yeah, that person, they kind of looked at me in a weird way, so that means that they're going to reject me. So what happens is that we end up rejecting ourselves before the other person can even reject us. So that's why, when we have like these, like, I guess, so-called disabilities, and it affects and it affects our self-esteem, then we almost create this problem for ourselves that doesn't even really exist.
So if you can't learn to love yourself, you shouldn't expect other people to love you. And like the simple, dumbed down version of what you're saying, which I definitely believe in. I have to say, it's like I 100% agree with what you're saying. But you touched up on a very important statement there: fear of rejection. Uh, it's like I've seen it firsthand and experienced it myself. It's it's hard to tackle that fear, but everyone has their way. But what I really want to know is, do you see it more in male or female? This fear of rejection.
I honestly think that it's the same for both.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay,
I think, again, I think it really goes back to self-esteem and how we were raised and how we talk to ourselves when rejection happens. I think that people that were, raised with more reassurance, from parents that were able to make this child feel like they were good enough. So even when they make mistakes and when things don't work, they still feel like, okay, my mom still loves me, my dad still loves me. This doesn't mean anything terrible about who I am, and I still feel safe with, I'm not going to be rejected by mom just because I make this mistake or just because I have this particular flaw.
true.
So when we're able to kind of like talk to ourselves in positive ways because our parents, kind of they modeled that for us when we were a child, then when we get older in relationships, we'll also be able to kind of soothe ourselves and reassure ourselves when things don't go our way. However, if we were raised in environments where we kind of felt rejected, or we were shamed for making mistakes and and not being perfect or something like that, I think we're more likely to take rejection personally, because it's like, because again, it's like we have this pattern that we repeat in ourselves, like, oh, am
Right.
I not enough, am I not good enough, am I not cool enough, what do I need to do in order to make this person like me, so I, again, yeah, self-esteem is so huge.
Right. So, what is? How can someone work on their self esteem? What is like the? Is it a baby step situation, or like how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, totally. It is. I feel like it needs to be in baby steps. In the beginning, I always notice that it feels really inauthentic. Like clients will come in, and when we're starting to work on self-esteem, I feel like, sometimes it'll come off very, affirmation, like all that stuff all those memes that you might see. It's like, oh, we're good enough, like today will be a better day. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of times clients at first, they're just like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just going to repeat, all these nice things to myself, and I'm going to stop being so hard on myself. So there's a lot of like cliche things that you might hear, on TV, or hear
Yep.
therapists say.
True.
And so I think that all of that really kind of comes from this inability to kind of like, the struggle that sometimes people have to kind of trust the process. But really what's going on is like when you slowly start to talk to yourself in a more compassionate way, you stop blaming yourself for everything bad that happens,
Hmm.
then slowly that's going to become habit. Right. It's not going to, like, in the beginning, it's like you have to kind of remind yourself, oh, there I go again, talking to myself in this bad way. Okay, let me replace this thought with something else. But eventually, the more that you're able to say, like, you know what, that wasn't my fault. That really, like that's not my issue.
Hmm.
Like, so for example, the other day, because I have an Instagram account, and sometimes I post certain questions on my stories for people to answer. And there was this
Link in
one
the
that
description to her Instagram account. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so there was this one question that I asked people. I said, because there was this therapist that said, the moment that you start to realize that, you're growing is the moment that you stop responding to certain triggers. And that feels wonderful. So I asked some of my audience, like, what does that look like for you? Like, how did you start realizing that you were growing? So this one person said, well, I started realizing that I was growing when I realized that my ex-boyfriend cheating on me wasn't my fault. That it was really about him not being able to be ready, and him, mistakes that he made, feelings that he has about, loyalty and commitment. And it has nothing to do with my worth.
All right. So, what's the answer to like? What's your answer to that question?
What do you mean?
When did you realize that you like? When did you start to realize that you're growing?
I love that. You're kind of throwing it back on me. When I was in, I would say, graduate school,
Mm,
that was when I started to learn. And I'll give you a brief background. So I
go
grew
ahead.
up in an environment where, an Asian, very traditional conservative environment,
Yep.
Mom and dad were pretty strict, and and basically it's like you need to respect your elders, right? Like no matter
Mm.
what, you just need to respect your elders. And so everywhere that we went to uncle's house, aunt's house, wherever, we would always have to go and say hello and greet each person. And
Similar
so
here.
yeah, and regardless of what we thought of them, regardless of whether they were the scariest people or the nicest or the meanest people in the
Exactly.
world.
Even if you don't
uh,
want to, you have to go and say hi. It's just like,
exactly. And so
I
and
get it.
so I was raised to just kind of believe like, okay, well, I just need to respect adults. So the
Hmm.
thing is that, in my mind, like I never really connected the fact that I grew up and became an adult. So I would
Ooh.
still see adults, like people that were older than me, as authority and adults. So when I was in graduate school, I was interning at this psych hospital, and I had a little bit of a conflict with the staff there who was older than me. And so he kind of like chastised me in front of a client that I was seeing, a teenage client, and I felt embarrassed, and I was like, oh my god, like how can he talk to me that way? But I was like paralyzed. I was like, oh my god, like what do
You're
I say
just
to
done. Yeah, like you
him?
just didn't know
Exactly.
what to do. Yeah, no, that's
So,
fine.
and that was so embarrassing because like here I am supposed to be this kind of therapist and this role model to this client of mine who's a teenager and really struggling, obviously, because she's inpatient. And so I talked to my supervisor at the time about it. And my supervisor was like, have you noticed that you get a little sheepish around authority? And when she said sheepish, I was like, oh my God, that is so embarrassing.
Mom, Dad, what did you do to
Exactly. I was like, oh
me?
my God, you guys. And so, and that was the most embarrassing thing. So she asked me, she's like, okay, have you ever heard of the term assertiveness? And I
Hmm.
was like, no. And she's like, okay, look it up. So I went home, I looked it up, and I was like, wow, I'd never heard of this term before, never knew what it is, learned about boundaries and all of these different things. I was like, holy crap, I have rights. Like, there's like, I have rights, and there are ways for me to stand up for myself when it comes to
Yeah,
authority.
fair.
So yeah, that was, I think, the beginning of my journey to like self-esteem,
Mm.
self-sufficiency, like that I didn't, that realizing that, I am an adult, and I have a right to stand up for what I want, and that, I can't just keep looking at people that are older than me.
You know what the issue is? The issue is, I like this just hit me right now. There are a lot of people that struggle to realize that they're shifting from childhood to adult. And I
Yeah.
just like it just hit me like wow. Because I was thinking to myself, what was my answer to that question? And then I realized, wait, why did I not realize I've grown up since like and I'm just like, whoa,
Yeah.
basically. I'm like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. You know
Why
what's
is that?
it's because like we don't it doesn't mean that just because like you turn 18. So I don't know, like where you are, like what the,
Hmm.
I guess, age of adult or growing up is,
It
but here
starts it starts at around 17 to 21. We call this the changing phase of
I
basically,
see.
yeah.
Okay, so it's not as like black and white as here in the US,
Mm,
where they basically say like once you turn 18 you're an adult,
mm.
right? So once you turn 18, there's certain rights that you all of a sudden have, and then when you turn 21 there's more rights, and then you turn 25 and there's more rights. But the truth of the matter is that we don't just like grow and then we turn 18 and then suddenly it's like, oh, I am a legal adult now. So it all of a sudden comes with the thought process of an adult, right? Like we don't all of a sudden just, gain this certain level of knowledge and insight just because we turn 18. So really what happens is that, when we're growing, it's like we're just people that are just developing and growing based on mistakes that we make, lessons that we learn, and we only know what we know. So that's why it's like I only know what I knew when I was 17, and then a little bit more when I turned 18, a little bit more when I turned 19. But unless somebody like kind of tells me something different, then I'm always going to keep believing in this one track mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
Always.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if I
Yeah.
always see my parents, like, for example, when we were born and we grow up, it's like usually it's our parents that are the ones that are taking care of us. They're the ones that are in charge of everything. So we completely trust them. we and regardless of whether our parents are trustworthy or not, we completely trust them to guide us and help us survive, feed us, and all of that stuff.
It's not just that, it's as well as like in our, like, especially in Asian culture, I would say helicopter parenting is like
Yep.
a lot. It gets a lot, like, and sometimes parents just forget that, okay, he's 21. I need to, like back off a little bit. Like it's they're riding the wave until like marriage, and it gets crazy. So yeah, no, continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. And the sucky thing about that though is like, you know, if they were helicoptering above us, that also
Mm,
prevents us from growing. So
true.
some we are going to make more mistakes because they were always on top of us. And, so we become actually more dependent on them, and so when they feel like, okay, now you're ready, right? Like now you're ready to go off on your own. I was like, wait, no, I'm not. So it's kind of like it's hard. Like
Mm,
adolescence is really hard
it
because
is.
that's the age where parents are still trying to hold on. Kids are trying to figure out who they are and become independent.
Yep.
And so it is this very sensitive dance. And that's why parents and teenagers so often like bump heads because they're going in different directions.
True.
You know?
True.
Yeah.
Except me
But
and you can't really bump heads with our parents because,
yeah,
yeah, like,
that's what I heard so much growing up. Yeah, yeah.
nah, no way. Am I like, dude. The thing is, with white kids, it's like go to your room and that's about it. With us, it's like they either turn into Indiana Jones or Bruce Lee, and it's just like you get your ass kicked because you basically said no. So yeah, no, it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Yeah, but one of the things that I think I actually find a lot, like, I like what you said when you said, like, oh, yeah, like what happened? I didn't even realize right now that I became
Yeah.
like, I feel like most most of my clients that are kind of in the young adult age,
Mm,
like in their early 20s, there's this transition that I consistently have had to go through with all of them, which is this realization that their parents are not perfect. This
yeah.
realization that their parents don't know everything and that they are just as flawed as they are, and that their parents make mistakes, and that their parents sometimes, will say things that they don't mean when they're angry. And that realization that, like, oh, my parents aren't perfect, sometimes it can be so
Uh,
validating.
not just that. It's for some people like it can be very hard to accept. Very,
Yeah.
because it's like we've, as kids, naturally we've like made our parents so holy and like flawless and like just perfect that as we grow, obviously it's natural that you start to see like your parents. Okay, wait, I kind of don't agree with this. I do agree with that, and it gets hard to accept that. Lo and behold, they're human beings too,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just crazy. So I want to get a little bit personal here. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what was the age you realized that, wait a minute, my parents aren't perfect?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I honestly probably 28.
28. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. I was like 17. I was, I,
Good for you. Yeah.
and that's why, no, listen, as you grow older, I feel like it's easier to accept, right?
Uh-huh.
At 17, it was the hardest thing for me to accept. Like, whoa, my dad
Yeah.
isn't as perfect as I thought he was, or whoa, like I still love him to bits, even like in everything, in their imperfection or whatever. Because my mom watches this, like, mom, I still love you, but hey, you're not perfect. Like no one really is, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, like it was hard. It was,
Yeah.
but that made them more human to me, and that made me accept
Yeah.
my mistakes in life, right? It
I
made me
agree.
learn to move forward instead of just looking back on the past.
Yeah. And I feel
Yeah,
like in a way, like, if we were to connect this to self-esteem, I feel like that realization that our parents aren't perfect and aren't always right, it almost like gives us the freedom now to make more mistakes. And then we're
yeah,
more compassionate. So
definitely.
like if my mom was like, you have to get straight A's, or if you don't get straight A's, then you're useless. I mean, my mom never actually said that, but kids
Mine
like that.
did. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding again. My
Yeah,
dad did though. My dad said that once to me. I was
A,
just like,
A, not A plus.
yeah, pretty much. No, I was just like, Dad, cease till you get your degrees. That's the way I'm going with things. It's just like, oh, you're useless. Accept it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, the moment that I realized, like, oh, my mom only got disappointed at me when I didn't get straight A's, not because she doesn't love me, but because she cares that much.
Mm.
It's not because I was useless. It's not because I was a bad student, because that's what I used to think, right?
It's
Like
because
when
she
I didn't.
knows your potential.
Exactly. And she just wants the best for me. And most parents want the best for us. Actually, I'm going to say all parents really want the
Yeah,
best for us.
of
Yeah.
course. Of
Yeah.
course. Even if they don't show it, I've realized this. Even if they don't show it, they always want the best for you. It's just some parents choose to, again, helicopter, and some parents choose to, let nature take its course, basically. And, it's cool either way. Like, so do you think you're going to be a helicopter parent, or do you think you're going to let nature take its course?
Oh man, people have said to me, I remember that years ago, my friends all started having kids. I don't have kids just yet, but you've heard the term tiger mom,
Hmm.
right? So my friends, I mean, most of this group of friends, they're all Asian, Chinese, and so they had their kids and they were talking about being tiger moms. And they're like, I think Betsy's going to be a tiger mom. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I was like really offended when they said that. So honestly,
What made them come to this? I have to ask. How did they come to that assumption?
I don't know. And I find that so interesting because I I don't know, maybe because I've learned to be more assertive in my
Mm,
relationships.
fair.
Um, but I don't know, like I mean, it's hard to say because I'm not a parent yet. Um, and but I've been a pet parent, and as a
Ooh.
pet parent, I was, I wouldn't consider myself like I don't know. I guess
Time
I
will
don't
tell.
see myself as being, yeah, I don't see myself as being a tiger mom. I wouldn't want to be a tiger mom. Um, I actually have a really good example, like a good model. My older sister, she's actually the only one out of all my siblings right now that have kids, and she has three kids.
Mm,
And she's a wonderful, wonderful mom. And as I watch her, she has a really good balance of being present for her kids and being permissive versus, providing a certain level of structure and guidance. And, and that's what I would like to be. Like, I want to be able to give my kids like a good balance of like, okay, I'm here for you. I want to help you develop, yourself as a person. I want you to feel like you are an interesting, unique person. So again, like I feel like I'm always going back to self-esteem, because that's what self-esteem really is
yeah.
that, the parent has to take an interest in this child and how interesting and unique they are. It's like,
Yeah.
you are a good person and you are good enough the way that you are. And I don't
Yeah.
expect you to meet other people's expectations. I just expect you to be the best that you can be, you know?
Fair. Yeah. I like that. That's really cool. Uh, there's another thing I've noticed in the mentality of adults pre-marriage and post-marriage, or actually, let's not use that. Let's say pre having a kid and post messing up and having a kid, right? It's crazy because like I have a lot of cousins. They're all in their like late 20s, early 30s, getting married, having kids, and I know that like you were crazy before you had a kid, and now you're all like bunkered down and like thinking like a normal, decent human being, right? So what happens there? Why, like, where, what happened?
I really think it's just love, you know, oxytocin, and just, when you truly, truly love something so much
Mm,
that you are able to, stop, I guess, being more selfish with your own needs.
fair.
That forces you to be more responsible, because it's like, okay, now I have this kid, And I need to make sure that it's not just about me anymore. I need to go to work, and I need to
Mm.
be more responsible. I need to, I need to, I want this kid to succeed, and I feel like there's this certain level of selflessness. And,
Yes.
and that's actually something that I learned. I never understood selflessness before until I fell in love. Um,
Okay.
and I feel like, when you truly feel safe with somebody, you're able to stop being as selfish and stop thinking about yourself all the time, because now this person is very, very important to you. And they kind of, and it's almost like this person is so special to you now in your life,
Mm.
and irreplaceable, that there's certain things that you will do in order to make this relationship last, in
Fair.
order to make it so this person doesn't suffer. And so it's like I see myself all the time being selfless with my husband. And of course, I'm not selfless to a point where it's like I completely push my needs aside, because that's where people pleasing comes in. So again, you have to kind of find that balance. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to love myself, but then sometimes, like I want to be able to be there for my husband,
Yeah.
and so I think, yeah, like, that's probably what you're seeing with all of your cousins is, love.
Probably. But on a different note, like, is it me or is marriage and relationships nowadays lasting like less than I don't want to say in the old times because that just makes it sound like I'm talking about the 1850s, like our parents, and their parents before. Like I feel like relationships, whatever it may be, even friendships sometimes, like it's just short termed. It's never really happy ever after, and like it's crazy to see. So what do you think is, first of all, do you notice this too?
Hmm.
You do.
I I personally haven't. Oh, okay. So I guess like based on my observations,
Mm.
lately I've seen a bigger trend of divorcees, like, or people that are getting divorced. So
Yeah.
right now in my clientele, my caseload, probably I would say I've got, 5 or 6 people that are going through divorces.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I'm seeing, I guess, in terms of my work, is that when people start to develop more of a self-esteem and more independence, they're starting to realize, okay, maybe this relationship isn't right for me, and there's something better out there. So this doesn't mean that I'm ever pushing anybody towards divorce,
Yeah.
but trend that you might be seeing, because this is, what I'm about to say is based on research, is that people are learning more about self-esteem and learning more about boundaries and standing up for themselves. And, and so whereas before, I think that the divorce rate, it wasn't low, but it could have been lower because,
Mm.
of like religious reasons, and, in like the 50s and stuff, like more conservative approaches to marriage and stuff, people were less likely to get divorced, versus now it's like people are realizing, like, okay, well, I'm unhappy in this relationship. And then on top of that, women are a lot more independent now and self-sufficient. So, they might feel like, okay, well, I have my own job and I'm able to take care of myself. So maybe I don't need to stay in this relationship if I'm unhappy. So I feel like people are starting to kind of like learn how to take care of themselves a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good or a bad thing, because really, I think that a lot of people still do get married before they are truly ready for it. And that can contribute to a higher divorce
Fair.
rate.
Fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a fair statement. I'd agree with that, especially that point there, because I think, especially here in our parts of the world, people take marriage as just this, like a contract of basically, yeah, I get to, go do what I've been waiting to do for years. But it's not like that. It's more of a responsibility. That's what a lot of people fail to understand is you being on your own, that life is over. Like the second you sign that paper saying you're married, gone. You're no
Right.
longer, on your own. And they also tend to forget that it's a two-man team or man and woman team, actually, or man and man, depending on where you are in this world, or woman and woman.
Mhm.
You guys do you, right? But
Or even like polyamory, right? Because that's a relationship as well. And, and I feel like what I've kind of seen sometimes is that people don't know how to, when they say that they want to be in a polyamorous relationship, a
Mhm.
lot of times what I've seen is a couple who wants to bring somebody in, versus, like having a relationship. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that, I agree or disagree, but what I'm agreeing with is that when you decide to enter a romantic relationship with somebody, it generally should be mutual, right?
True.
Everybody has like equal rights and things like that.
In
But
Arabia, you can marry up to 4 wives. Just saying.
yeah,
Yeah, so polygamy is actually a thing here.
I see. Okay.
I'll go for
But
that.
like I feel like one thing that, and I don't know, maybe this is just me being judgy. I don't know,
No,
but
it's fine. You can share your opinion. This is a
yeah,
safe
okay,
space.
good, confidential, right? Just kidding.
Uh, I mean, just you
I
and
I
YouTube.
know what
Like
we're doing here.
no one else.
But I feel like there's some people that use marriage as a way of expressing love to each other. Like, sometimes people are in the honeymoon stage and they're like just so into the relationship. There's so much passion. That's like, oh, I need to prove how much I love you. And to communicate and express my love to you. Will you
Mhm.
marry and it's just like, ugh, yeah. And I've seen a lot of that happen. So I don't want to say that there's any statistics out there or anything. This is just based on observation. And, and I used to like watch a lot of like tabloid stuff and like celebrities like that they like get married and divorced, like, just like
Yeah.
every 2 years. So I'm just like, oh my God, like sometimes people just get really caught up in the moment and then they get married and don't realize like what goes into getting married. And it's like really it's a long-term commitment that you're making, and
It
it's a commitment
is.
to like let go of some, not all, let go of some of you and your previous life in order to form a new one with this person that you're agreeing to be in a marriage with.
Yeah, that's like very well said. Like I can't add anything to that. That was very well said. Well, here's another thing that comes to mind. So we have discussed on like today a lot about self-esteem, right? So as someone who's a heavy believer in self-esteem, where do you draw the line or how do you balance out self-esteem to the point where it's not too low where I hate myself every single day and it's not too high where I'm overconfident and everyone around me think I'm just a douchebag, right? So like how do I balance it out, or how do you like either bring someone down from their high or put someone up from their low?
I think exactly what you're saying is like, so self-esteem, it's really all about the self, right?
Mhm.
Like it's almost like imagine self-esteem as like, okay, if I am in this world without anybody else, and I just have to figure out how to keep going in my life.
Mhm.
So what that means is like if my self-esteem is too high, meaning, if you're arrogant or overconfident, that would be like, I think I'm better than you, right? Like, so you're kind of comparing yourself to other people versus like, oh, you know what? I'm actually a really, good artist, right? It's like, it has nothing to do with whether you're a better artist than somebody else. It's just, you're good enough. And then too low of self-esteem would kind of be the opposite, right? Like, oh, like I am not good enough in compared to that person. A balanced self-esteem would be like, well, my work is not, as good, or my work is not exactly like that other person, but there's something special about my work anyway.
Fair.
Right. So
Yeah.
really it just kind of comes back to like yourself. It's just like you need to just be able to like yourself, be confident in yourself. When something goes wrong, be able to pick yourself back up in order to move forward. And it really has nothing to do with being better than anybody, being, overly confident. It just simply means like, I can function in this world in a balanced, peaceful
So
way.
being real with yourself, just
Yeah,
be real
totally.
with yourself. I get, yeah, that's a good advice. I'll take that on to note. So I want to touch up on the positive affirmation stuff you said. Uh, I had a friend who won't say any names, but like he or she tried doing that, waking up every morning, saying I'm amazing, I'm this, but they seem to find that it kind of doesn't work. So my initial diagnosis was you're just not believing in what you're saying. You're just saying it for the sake of saying it. Is this a common thing you see when people, start to take on the whole "I'm great" road, or what's going on?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that, when people say things without really understanding what's behind it, and they're just
Mhm.
saying for the sake of saying it, then it's basically pointless. Right. So I think that, they have like affirmation books and lots of like memes and stuff that talk about like self-esteem kind of stuff, or like, you can do this. You can look in the mirror and say that stuff all you want, but if you don't actually come from a place where you truly truly believe it, it's not going to do anything whatsoever.
Yep.
So if you look in the mirror and you say like, I believe in you, you can do it, but then you walk away from the mirror and you keep telling yourself like, oh my god, like that person is so much better than me and I'm never going to succeed, and
It's not gonna
then
work.
yeah, exactly. So I
It's
think that
not
there
gonna work.
definitely is this, like that's part of the reason why some people are like, oh, affirmations don't work. Affirmations aren't meant to replace therapy. It's not meant to replace self-esteem. So I mean, they're basically just reminders for us sometimes, once we do believe in something, or sometimes it forces us to think about things in a different way.
It's a brick in the wall, basically. Like
Yeah.
a wall isn't made of this one brick that you place. No, it's a lot of things to combine and build up that wall of self-esteem. Yes, that's great. That's great. So, judging on this past like 40 minutes of talking to me, how would you rate my self-esteem?
Well, so far what I see is you have pretty good self-esteem. I mean, you seem pretty self-assured in, what you're saying, and you seem happy. So how would
Perfect.
you rate yours?
I mean, I know myself. I'm always real with myself. I like to Here's what I do. So my routine of waking up every morning is I'm just like, oh, another day in the life, right? But I know myself well enough to know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at to, like keep maintain my self-esteem, let's say.
Yeah.
So I won't attempt anything I'm bad at just so I don't go like, oh my God, I'm so bad at life. But I won't just stick to the stuff I'm good at where my confidence is like peak through the roof and I'm delusional because like I've been there once, not going there again. And yeah, that's basically how I do it personally.
Yeah.
I remind myself, I look at myself in the mirror and say, hey, you're not perfect. No one is. That's what makes human beings perfect, is that we aren't perfect. And that's
Mhm.
what I do every day. It's
Yeah.
literally
Well,
what I do.
that sounds like self-esteem to me, because for me, like one huge sign of self-esteem is, it's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people assume self-esteem is. It's
Mm.
humility. It's being able to be authentic and be yourself, and know that that doesn't necessarily automatically mean that people are going to reject you or hate you for it. I think that low self-esteem is where we try to present as perfect all the time, and
Mhm.
so we're constantly like hiding, like we can't be vulnerable with people. We won't admit mistakes. And so, like I think that honesty and vulnerability, authenticity, all of those are just signs that a person has pretty good self-esteem. Like like you said, like you're able to be real with yourselves. Like, I'm good at this. I'm not good at this, and I'm okay that I'm not good at this. But I'm gonna challenge myself in order to get better at it if I want to
Yep.
get better. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. You know what I find is killing self-esteem a lot nowadays, especially in the 21st century. I think everyone who's listening to me now or watching now knows where I'm going with this, but
Oh
this
yeah.
bad boy, this guy right here, this deteriorates, decimates, destroys self-esteem because every time someone goes on Instagram is your prime example here because nobody puts their real life situation on Instagram. A picture that goes on Instagram is either you with a fancy car, wearing something fancy, eating something fancy, showing the best parts of your life.
Mhm.
And this, I feel like this dehumanizes any person to a point where it's just crazy. Like, it's like, bro, I know you. That's not your car. Why are you acting like that's your, like, bro, that's not where you eat every single day. If you did, you'd be broke by like 2 days after payday. Like, what are you doing? And at the same time, I sit with my friends and I hear them like, "Oh my god, bro, I wish I had this person's life and look at this, look at that on Instagram." I'm like, "Okay, that's the stuff he chooses to post. That's not his real life. Like you don't know what's happening behind the curtains." And it's crazy. It's
Mm-hmm.
just crazy. Like I don't I feel like I'm the only one among my peers that realizes that this actually destroys self-esteem, and it's I don't know what to say honestly. Like, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I think that, like that totally messes with our self-esteem because again, like if we don't think that we're special enough for being who we are, we
Mm.
start looking like outward to see like, okay, well, these people are special. Let me be more like them. And so like when people are following fitness models that have 500,000 followers or something, it's like, oh, that's exactly what I want to look like. That's who I want to be like. And so we end up, I mean, of course, not everybody has the money to go get plastic surgery and stuff, but like we end up like almost becoming like the same, right? It's like we lose this uniqueness because we
Yeah.
just want to look like everybody else. And that further destroys our self-esteem because it's like what makes you unique is slowly being covered up and being taken away, and you're hiding it from everybody because you're just trying to look like somebody else or live somebody else's life.
And it's not good to bottle that imperfection of yourself in, because end of the day, away from your phone, social media, away from the Zoom conference, away from everything, you begin to realize that, oh my god, I'm being fake. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
just, and it's crazy because it really hurts inside, and it sucks. Like every time, like there was a point in my life where I did do those kind of stupid shit. I will admit, guilty, right? But I stopped doing that because I'm just like, but I'm being fake and I'm not being real, and I'm sending like this crappy message. And I mean, what's done in the dark will always find a way to shine, right? Like it's literally like, then
You know
what
what
are you gonna
this
say?
reminds me? Yeah, you know how sometimes when you go through these like filters
Mm,
and like so what I like to do sometimes is I'll like watch TV with my husband. If I get bored, I'll just bust out my Snapchat. Like I don't ever post anything on Snapchat, but I like playing with the filters.
true.
So,
Yeah.
but when you're like swiping through the filters, sometimes like it go like there'll be like a snap of like your normal face
Mm.
because like the filter hasn't caught up to the next one, and so it's like you'll see yourself with these like beautiful filters and this
Yeah.
swipe there's like, oh my god, like that's what I really look like.
Yeah, dude.
And like,
Oh, like
oh my god, like I'm that ugly. Like, and it's like the worst thing in the world because it's like no, this is a filter. This is a fake digital
yeah,
thing to make you look like somebody that you're not even. So
true.
create like expectations that you can't even meet. And
It.
I remember like when I was in high school. Oh my God, me and my sisters, we used to watch this show called Models Inc. or something like that. And these models were like 6 feet tall, skinny, and me and my sister are here like 5'3", like normal average body type. And we used to try to buy clothes that looked like these models. We would just look at pictures like, oh my God, I want to look like that so badly. But I'm just like, dude, we're never gonna be like taller than 5'3".
Yeah, this ain't it,
And
chief.
yeah. And then so I was always so depressed because like, I'm never gonna look like that. But one day I discovered Britney Spears and I was like, she's actually good looking as well. But her
Yeah.
body type is so different. But my body type is a little bit more similar to hers.
Mm.
And so when I started to look at her and like I was able to kind of like remind myself, like, oh, like I can be beautiful in my own way too.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to look like a 6 foot tall model. Like, there's beauty in somebody that doesn't look like that. So there's like different kinds of beauty. And so that's where I started to learn, I guess, how to accept myself a little bit more. And
Hmm.
because it's like in the end of the day, like you cannot be anybody else anyway. So you might as well just get comfortable being who you are.
Pretty much. Forget it's Brittany, more like it's Betsy, bitch, right? Like
Exactly. Betsy.
that's exactly, yeah. That's there you go. Just like that. Look at that. We've reached the timestamp, dude. This was a fun conversation. Self
Yeah.
esteem, people. That's the way to go. That's literally the way to go. Like more self esteem. One final question before I let you go. what's the future looking like for Dr. Betsy Chung?
I really don't know. The pandemic has completely changed, my career in a positive way.
Ooh.
So I've been, continuing to see clients on, pretty much a daily basis. But what I've also been, getting really into is just sharing knowledge. I just feel like therapists, and especially therapists that are kind of in the public eye, we're kind of trying really hard to almost make the world a better place. Like, we want to give people the skills in order to learn more about themselves, convince them, or like encourage them to go seek therapy so that they can learn to be happier and things like that. So I think that part of what I've been doing is just moving more into I guess the media sector, so that I'm able to kind of share more of this information out there for people. So but I mean, yeah, that so far it's like I'm just kind of taking things as they go. I don't really have like a goal of exactly where I want to be. And I'm lucky enough to be able to say that I don't need to have a goal right now. So
Yeah. Well, check this out. If you reach this part of the video, please do subscribe, like, share. Obviously, you can follow Dr. Betsy. We'll leave a link in the description below to her Instagram, her socials. Is there anything you'd like to shout out or let the world know?
if you want to follow me on Instagram, I share a lot of information about relationships, with yourself as well as others, kind of like what I was talking about throughout today's session. So my IG handle is love always at Dr. Betsy.
Yep.
My
Link in the
own.
description below. You guys check her out. Her page is amazing. Uh, Obviously, like, subscribe, share. We said all that. Dude, did you know that 75% of the people who watch our videos aren't subscribed? It's
Really?
crazy. Yeah, like
Huh.
it's crazy. And we're like, guys, subscribe. It's free. So why don't you let the 75% of the people know what happens to them if they choose not to subscribe?
They don't get to learn anything.
There you go. It's as simple as that. You just don't get to learn anything. Well,
Wow.
it's been a pleasure. This is a good episode. This is usually how we sign out. It's a salute to cover the camp, and peace.
As well of filmmakers coming in. The thing is, previously in the Middle East, it wasn't something that your parents would have pushed you to it. You would have, they would always push the handis and the doctor and all of this, because for
Right.
them it used to make the right amount of money. And like the creative aspect of them pushing us towards it was never there. No one would tell you, yeah, go study film and create movies, because no one believes that you will make enough money. And now with the digital world, with people getting to share, and these smaller movies, like you said, they have a better chance now to go on platforms where people would